Look at the number chart. How are the numbers shown in the chart alike? The chart shows decimal numbers in hundredths and tenths. There are patterns in decimal number charts. Let's look for the patterns by looking at the rows and columns of the chart. What can you tell by looking at the rows in the decimal chart? The numbers increase by 1/100th as you move from left to the right. What can you tell by looking at vertical columns of the decimal chart? The chart shows an increase by 1/10 as you move down. What can you do to fill in the squares on the chart? Continue the pattern to label the other squares. Let's look at the chart a little closer to identify the patterns. Look at the following column from the chart. What are the missing decimals? As you work with vertical columns, you will see the tenths increase by 1. The hundredths stay the same as you move down. What number is just after 31/100ths in the vertical column? How do you know? The next number is 41/100ths because the tenths increase by 1 and the hundredths stay the same. Now look at a row from the decimal chart. What are the missing decimals? Moving from left to right, the tenths are the same in each row except for the last number. Why does the last square contain 30/100ths? For the last square, you increase the hundredths by 1. The previous hundredth is 29/100ths, so the next number is 30/100ths or 3/10ths. Look at the columns and rows to find the patterns to fill in all the missing numbers. There are patterns in decimal number charts. Now you know how to look for a pattern in a decimal chart.
Hello, hello. All right, let's take a look at Unit 1, Lesson 4, Finding a Pattern. So you already watched the animation, and you already saw in the animation something that looks similar to this. So here we see a table with decimals. And what we learned in the animation is that as we move down, so as we go from top to bottom, you'll notice that we get bigger by 1/10. So here I have 61/100ths or 6/10ths and 1/100th, and then 71/100ths, 7/10ths and 1/100th. So we're going to have to figure out the missing pieces of information. Now, as we move from left to right, as we move to the right, we get bigger by 1/100th. So left to right, we increase by 1/100th. And as we move down, we increase by 1/10. So you might want to write that down in your math notebook just to kind of remember. So as we go from left to right, we're just counting sequentially. 61, 62, 63 hundredths. And then we're going to keep going. As we move down, we skip count by tens. So we go 61, 71, and you can guess what's probably going to go in here. So your lesson for today is asking you to simply look at the pattern and figure out what the missing information is. So we're going to take a look at these blank spots right here, all of these blank spaces, and we're going to figure out, exactly what should go into those blank spaces. I find it's easier to start off by going left to right because those count sequentially than it is to go down because then you have to count by tens. It's really up to you. It doesn't make a difference in what order you do it. You do whatever's easiest for you. So if I take a look going left to right, I see that I have 61/100ths, 62/100ths, and remember I know that this is a hundredths because that last digit is in the hundredths place. Remember we learned Tom hears and then thunder. The T, Tom, is tenths. The H, hears, is hundredths. I'm not going to have room for it. THS. And then the TH for thunder is thousands. All right, so I know that this 2 is the second place value over for decimals. The second place value over is H for hundredths. So if I keep counting 63 hundredths, then I'm going to do 64 hundredths, 65 hundredths, 66 hundredths, and now I can check to make sure that my pattern is correct because they already gave us 67 hundredths. Since that's what I would have put down anyway, since if I kept ordering my numbers, that's what I would have come to next, I know that likely these numbers are correct. I can use this given number to help me figure out whether or not my pattern is correct. If I keep reading, I have 68 hundredths, and then 69 hundredths. After 69 would be 70 hundredths. Now, remember when we're talking about decimals that we don't end a decimal with a 0. It's unnecessary because 0 hundredths equals nothing. So I don't really need to have the 7D. I can get rid of that 7D. I can get rid of the 0 and just leave it as 0.0 because that's 7 tenths. And remember, if I give you 7 $10 bills, 7 tenths, it equals 70. So 7 tenths is the same as 70 hundredths. We just don't need that extra 0 at the end. It's kind of unnecessary. Zeros are very important. They are fancy, and they don't like to be the very last number. They like to either be the first or they like to be in the middle. But when we're talking about decimals, at least, zeros don't want to be on the end. They always want to be in the beginning or in the middle. Whole numbers is different. All right, so let's continue. So we have 71 tenths or 71 hundredths, 72 hundredths, 73, 74, and then I would write down 75. Perfect. So we're good to go. 76, 77, 78, 79, and 80. But remember, I don't need that 0 at the end, so 0.8. Now, I also know that when I'm filling in a pattern by going down, I add 1/10. So I already know that 1/10 added to 71 hundredths. If I add another 1 to the tenths place, that's going to give me 81 hundredths, which is what would come after 8 tenths. So I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to fill in the rest of this chart. Really easy. You just use those given numbers to help you as a guide, and you just keep filling it in 1/100th or 1/10th at a time, depending on if you're going up or down or left or right. And now here we're all done. Awesome. That was pretty easy. Let's try a trickier one. So if I take a look at this one, I only have an upside down L. It looks kind of like a sideways upside down L. So in order to complete this, I really only need to fill in these boxes here and these boxes up here. Remember that as I go down, I'm adding 1/10. Whoops, sorry guys. And as I go left to right, I'm adding 1/100th. So if I'm going down, I'm going to skip count by adding tens. So if I add 1/10, here's my number in the 10th place. That's the 1. If I add 1 more to it, I'm going to get 2 and then 4 hundredths. So 24 hundredths. If I add another 1, if I add 10 more hundredths, I get 34 hundredths. And another 10 would give me 44 hundredths. Now moving from left to right, all I do is add 1/100th. And remember, the 100th is the second place, so that 4. So I'm going to increase my 4 by 1. So I'm going to have 15 hundredths, 16 hundredths, and 17 hundredths. So remember, write down in your math notebook, moving left to right, you add 1 to the hundredths place. Moving down, you add 1 to the tenths place. The 10th is right next to the decimal. Let's try one more. Now this one's a little tricky because we have diagonals. What I suggest that you do in cases like this, fill in this empty space. Pretend there's a block there. I'm going to draw it and fill in what it would be so that it can help you figure out those numbers that you need to know. So if I move left to right, I know that I add 1/100th. So I'm going to add 1 to the 2 because the 2 is in the hundredth spot. So if I add 1, this would be 0.43 hundredths. And I know that when I go down, I add 1 to the tenths place. So the digit next to the decimal. So that would be the 4. So if I'm going down, I add 1 to the 4 and I would get 52. So I can use this kind of pattern to help figure in those missing boxes. If I move over, this would be 53 hundredths. If I move down, this would be 62. I'm adding 1 to the tens place. This would be 72. This would be 82 because I'm counting by 10. And if I move to the right, I add 1. So 63, 73, 83. You'll also notice that if you go down on the right side, you're still adding by 10. 43, 53, 63, 73, 83. Now, if I erase all of those spots that were used to helping us, we have our perfect answer. So here's our chart. Looking for a pattern with decimals is really easy if you remember that going down, you're adding to the tenths place, and going left to right, you're adding to the hundredths place. Good job, guys. Try to practice some on your own and see how you do.